The purpose of this video is to give parents of Year 10 students information about moving forward into Year 11, subject selections and the requirements of the South Australian Certificate of Education, or SACE. The first thing to recognise is that the SACE has already begun for students in Year 10 through their engagement in the Personal Learning Plan, or PLP. This is one specific subject that happens 3 times a week and allows students the opportunity to question what they're good at, where their interests are, what career they might be interested in, and where they can develop their skills and set goals in the future. The purpose of this particular program is to prepare students for the SACE. This being said, it is a compulsory element of the SACE, and the expectation is that every Year 10 student at Cardine College will successfully complete it by the end of Year 10. Once Year 10's finished and the PLP is complete, the Year 10s move into what we call Stage 1. Just to explain some of the language, Stage 1 refers to the course that's usually completed in Year 11, and Stage 2 describes what's usually completed in Year 12. That being said, later on as you start to learn about different subjects and look through the curriculum handbook, you might notice that some subjects could be a Stage 1 or a Stage 2 subject. For example, we currently have some Year 11 students who are engaging in Stage 2 music. As well as that, we have some Year 10 students who are engaging in Stage 1 netball or football academy. For this reason, there can sometimes be a slight difference when we talk about Stage 1 and Stage 2 and the year level of the student. In terms of measuring the SACE, students earn credits. At the end of the SACE, or at the end of their formal schooling, they need to have accumulated 200 credits, and we'll show how that's spread over the 2 years. For basic measurement purposes, 1 semester of study in a single subject is worth 10 credits. So if I do 1 semester of English and I pass at a C grade or higher, I achieve 10 credits towards my SACE. A full year of study is then consequently worth 20 credits. There are some compulsory subjects as part of the SACE, and these need to be completed, and there's no condition to avoid them or move away. If students don't complete these components, then they're ineligible for the SACE. The first I've already mentioned, which was the Personal Learning Plan, which they do in Year 10 and is worth 10 credits. In this case, even though it seems like it's only worth 10 out of 200 credits, it needs to be completed, otherwise the SACE cannot be achieved. As well as that, there's some literacy and numeracy requirements. In Stage 1, students are required to do a full year of English, or to accumulate 20 credits worth of literacy. As well as that, they're required to do 1 semester of numeracy, or a mathematics subject. For this reason, it is compulsory to do an English subject in Year 11, and students don't have a choice about that. If students fail English in Year 11, then they become ineligible for the SACE. While literacy and numeracy are compulsory in Year 11, there is some choice about what students select in terms of their pathway through. For English, there are 2 options: the mainstream English, which is engaged in by probably about 90% of our students, and the English Essentials course. It's worth recognising that the English Essentials course is specifically designed for students with learning needs or who require specialist help with their literacy and their writing in order to get them over the line. It's not a choice for students who are just looking for the easy way out. In this case, we would advise for most students to engage in the mainstream English course, and it's recommended that you consult with somebody if you're considering selecting English Essentials. For mathematics, there's 4 options. In this case, the Essentials course plays the same role as that of English, and the general course is open to all students and generally tends to be more popular. The methods A, B and C is the more high advanced level of maths and is more suited to those who engage well with maths and want to take that through into higher levels. Specialist maths is an extra component of maths that sits on top of that, and it's more suited towards students who are specifically looking to transition into engineering or something in that high design and mathematics field. In a lot of ways, it's a very specific bridging course into a very specific profession. So for that reason, it tends to be more of a niche subject for particular students with particular needs. We've already mentioned the Personal Learning Plan, which as we said was compulsory and is the first step to gaining the SACE. Hopefully this program, if passed and engaged with, has allowed the student to start thinking about the pathway that they'd like to take, and it's asked them some critical questions about where they'd like to head in their learning for the future. In regards to assessment of the SACE, all assessment takes place in the form of performance standards, which apply specifically to each subject. The standards are the same around the state. This is an example of a performance standard document for Stage 1 English, and you can see that along each of the 3 areas of assessment, there's specific language used to determine whether a student is operating at the A, B, or so on. Moving on now to Stage 2. In this case, students need to successfully complete at least 70 credits, 10 of which take place in the compulsory subject of the research project, which is an individually driven project where students select a particular question based on an area of interest. This takes place in Year 12 at Cardine College in the first semester of the year. To make up the remaining 60 credits, students have a choice of a range of subjects. Now, it's important at this stage to recognise that most students do more than the minimum credits, so we rarely find ourselves getting down to the wire in terms of counting how many credits a student has. With different programs that run throughout both years, including things like the Australian Business Week, which runs in Year 10, all of these provide extra opportunities for students to receive credits. So we generally shouldn't be too worried about whether a student has met their 200 or not. This is a graphical representation of what the SACE looks like in terms of how it's broken up and distributed. We can see that there's a number of compulsory subjects here. Stage 1 or 2 need the 10 credits for numeracy, Stage 1 or 2 need the 20 credits for literacy, the personal learning plan, the research project and everything along that line. And we can also see the break between the Stage 1 and Stage 2, between the orange and the blue. This represents where the students' compulsory subjects sit in relation to how much choice they have around where they study. In regards to compulsory subjects, at Cardine, students every year will engage with religious education. In Year 11 specifically, they need to do 20 credits of English and 10 credits of mathematics. In Year 12, students do not have to do English or mathematics, but they will still do RE. There's a list here of all of the different topics and subjects available to students moving into Year 11. And there's quite a range of different subject selections there, and it's important that students have a good idea of what they're interested in and where they should be going. Recognising this, the next part of this presentation aims to give you as the parent some information about how you can engage in conversation with your child about where they're heading and what they're thinking. First and foremost, it's important to think about the plan as to where the student plans to go after their time at school. University and TAFE are common options, but they're certainly not the only options available these days, and we'll talk about that a little bit further down the track. To start with, however, university requires the completion of the SACE, and it also requires the completion of 4 20-credit Stage 2 subjects to get what's called an ATAR. We'll talk about that in a moment. Without an ATAR, a student is unable to transition straight from high school into university. This doesn't mean that they're blocked out of university for the rest of their life, but if a student is looking to go to university in the year straight after their Year 12, then it's recommended that they follow this path. Some subjects for university have prerequisite requirements, and it's always worth making sure that you check these out because it can help guide the decisions that are made about students and subject selection. With this in mind, what we always recommend is to, rather than looking at a year ahead, look at a few years ahead and think about the possible outcomes if particular study patterns were followed and where certain recommendations might be. In a similar way, moving into TAFE generally requires or is recommended to have the completion of the SACE, but the website has more specific requirements for every course. When it comes to TAFE, depending on the nature of the course, entry requirements can vary from requiring an interview or the submission of a portfolio, or it could just be a case of signing yourself up, depending on what the course is. So make sure you check this out and think about the subjects that you select in build up towards that. When we talked before about the ATAR, this stands for the Australian Tertiary Admissions Rank, which is a measure of students' achievement in Stage 2 SACE compared to other students in the state. This is used by universities to select school leavers for admission, and the range is between 0 and 99.95. Generally, what we find is that every course for university has an ATAR expectation. So for example, if a student was looking to do medicine or something in the high academic field, the expectation was that their ATAR would be in the high 90s. However, some fields of study have a much lower rank, perhaps 60 or 70, and other courses have no requirement of rank whatsoever. Again, it's really important to check out the website for SATAC, which is the South Australian Tertiary Admissions Centre, and just to look up some of the different courses that you might be interested in and some of the prerequisites and requirements to moving forward. This really allows the students to choose the best subjects to move forward and allows them to think about their pathway as an ongoing process rather than just 1 year at a time. As previously mentioned, university is certainly not the only pathway to follow following your time at school. And these days we're finding more and more students are taking diverse opportunities and areas to move into their chosen career. Some of these can include an apprenticeship or a pathway through vocational education and training, which can all be offered through Cardine. For students interested in this, we run a number of subjects which we call bridging subjects, such as workplace practices and community studies. The benefit of these subjects is that they allow us to focus specifically on industry and providing a pathway of transition into a vocational education or apprenticeship-based learning situation. It's worth noting, however, that community studies in particular does not allow students to achieve an ATAR. So it's important to have the conversation about what the student is looking to achieve and where they're looking to go. You may well be aware that as part of Cardine College, we have Marcellin Technical Campus, which is only a short drive away from our main campus. For this campus, we offer a range of different opportunities in vet study and apprenticeship. The list on this slide shows what is available to students as of 2019. And as this comes under the banner of Cardine College, these certificates are at no cost to families. We also work in partnership with organisations such as TAFE, who offer a broader range of courses and options for students. Because the assessment of this is done by a different institution, however, there are some fees that may be implemented onto families, so it's important to have the conversation. We recommend for students who are interested in a very specific or niche TAFE course to make sure that they meet with our course counsellor and our careers office in order to figure out the best way forward and learn what the potential cost or complications may be. For the next couple of slides, we'll be talking about some important areas to discuss with your child when it comes to the subject selection process. It's about recognising that this is very much a conversation and it's something that should go over a couple of weeks rather than be left to the last minute. The first thing to recognise is that our focus is to meet the SACE pattern requirements. These are non-negotiable. Cardine College's primary interest is in making sure that each of our students achieves the South Australian Certificate of Education. And while there's a number of ways that this can be achieved, it is about recognising that this is the overall outcome that students should be seeking to walk away with. With this in mind, it's important that students consider what would lead to further study, what they're looking to do in the future, where they're looking to go, and what possible prerequisites for these courses might be. As well as that, Stage 1 or Year 11 offers students the opportunity to try subjects that they may or may not be interested in. For example, if the student's interested in history, they may choose to try both ancient history and modern history, which are both options in Stage 2. And then depending on which one they enjoy the most, they might follow that through in Year 12. This being said, if the student does not like taking exams, then looking forward and recognising that modern history has an exam in Stage 2 while ancient history does not, could be a deciding factor. What we need to consider is which subjects might I try to get a better guide about my aptitude for those subjects. How do I know if I'm interested in it, and how do I know if I'm good at it? Well, for that reason we see Year 11 as a great opportunity. The key at the end of the day, through stage 1 and stage 2, is to choose subjects that they are interested in and can do the best at. There are no subjects or no golden combination of subjects that gives students any particular advantage these days. It's purely about making sure that students study something that they are willing to engage in. A few just quick thinking points. It's worth recognising that not all subjects can be started mid-year and that the curriculum handbook indicates this. For example, if you're looking to do maths and the high-end maths in Year 12, the expectation would be that you do the maths A, B and C in Year 11, which takes up a full year. You can't do a year of essential or general maths in Year 11 and then expect to transition into the advanced maths in Year 12. Same goes for a language. As well as that, we have some subjects that only run for a semester, for example, outdoor education. And we have some subjects that only start at the mid-year, for example, the research elective, which is a bridging course moving into the research project for students who are interested. In this case, think about where this might sit in possible choices. As well as that, we always like just to make parents aware that if a student wishes to study interstate, they're required to complete English in Year 12. And there's a number of other little fiddly requirements out there depending on where the student's looking to go, whether they're looking to move into a particular course or institution, whether they're looking to go into the military, anything along that line. So we always encourage that when talking about future pathways with students, you take the time to go and have a bit of a look about what that might look like and if there's any particular requirements that would be worth investing in now. Moving on now, we look at the subject selection form, which was made available to Year 10 students in week 1 of term 3. The forms look like this, and an electronic copy was sent home to parents as well as emailed to students. The form is quite comprehensive in outlining the process and what needs to happen in regards to selecting subjects. For a bit of information, subject selection is 2 parts here at Cardine. We have a paper version, which is filled out by the student and submitted back to the homeroom teacher, and we also have an online version. This allows us the best opportunity to make sure that students are accurately choosing their subjects and that we're enrolling them in a way that best supports their preferences. This is the primary area where students need to submit their subjects. You can see some of the boxes for preference 1, 2 and 3 are already full with the compulsory subjects, in this case English and mathematics. You'll also notice that mathematics takes up 1 box in semester 1 but not in semester 2, and this is because those 10 credits are compulsory, but whether the student continues with math in semester 2 is essentially up to them. All of the other areas represent places where students can write in and select specific subjects that they would like to study. They also have 2 reserve preferences, and these are just worth having in case a subject or circumstance means that the class becomes full, but we'll explain a little bit more about that later down the track. As well as filling out the paper form and submitting it, students are also given a form about online subject selections, and this validates and substantiates their choices through part of that process and allows our administration office to put together and plan resources during the process. All students were given a white piece of paper with a unique access code and password, and you can see on the screen here and on the piece of paper where you need to go in order to log in and make your choices. In terms of the way this platform works, students are allowed to submit their choices up to 20 times. What this means is, it's usually a good idea to get on early and have a bit of a play with the website, select some different subjects and see how it works, and then you can always change your selections later on. We certainly recommend not leaving it to the last minute or trying to submit it at 12:59 on the day that it's due. With this in mind, I'll talk briefly about how subject selection works. There is no advantage to students putting in their preferences early or late. So don't worry about first in, best served. The way that the system works is that once the closing date comes up in week 5 of this term, we then look at who has selected particular subjects and we adjust accordingly based on that. Cardine College is unique in the sense that we build our timetable every year based on the needs of students. What this means is, if 60 students have indicated that they would like to do ancient studies, then we'll likely have 2, perhaps 3 classes for ancient studies running that next year. If students, 5 or 6 students have indicated that they want to do something, or one student has indicated, then it's less likely that that subject will run. What's worth recognising is the fact that after the formal submission process, we determine our classes and timetable from there. If a student then comes a month or 2 months later and says, actually, I want to change and do a particular subject, then the timetable is already set and the classes have been created. So it's important to make sure that subject choices are accurate and that they've been determined before the closing date. As a final piece of information, I draw attention to the curriculum handbook, which is available online and will also be sent via email to all Year 10 and Year 11 students in the next week. If you go onto the Cardine website under the academic banner, you can find the curriculum handbook as one of the tabs there. Downloading this document is essential. It gives an outline of all subjects offered at Year 10, 11 and 12, as well as any prerequisites or requirements that they might have. You'll also find a description of the subject and a description of the type of assessments that the subject offers. It's a great guide to inform students about what subjects might be best suited to them. As well as the curriculum handbook, we recognise that there are a number of questions that need to be asked on the day-to-day, and for that reason we have a strong setup through our homeroom teacher, house leader and our careers office, and students can book an appointment with a careers advisor or counsellor at any time to ask questions about possible pathways and subjects. In regards to finding out about a specific subject, students are encouraged to approach their homeroom teacher or house leader, who can refer them to a specific teacher who might be able to give them some more information. At the end of the day, we recognise that subject selection is a process that takes time and consideration. This brings us to the end of our presentation. In the case you have any further questions or would like to know anything else about transitioning into the SACE and following through Year 11 and Year 12 at Cardine College, don't hesitate to call our administration office and ask through for relevant staff. We hope that this has been informative for you, and again, wish you the best in the subject selection process moving into stage 1.